right, folks, time for another edition of the World Edition. We'll see if some of our regular panelists show up. It is the day after Easter Monday, so some folks may be relaxing and taking it easy, but we'll get to some of the news, and we do have a special guest that'll be able to talk about women in technology, women rights, and a number of other things in that space. But let me get you to some of the news stories, and then we'll bring in our special guest as well. But definitely, it does look like there is another active shooting, unfortunately, over there in Louisville this time. That's right, there are multiple casualties being reported in a shooting that just recently took place in Louisville, Kentucky. So that is going on in downtown Louisville on this particular day. And as we hear more, we'll let you know more between today and other days as well, because we do know that the gun rights issue, as guns in general, has been a very much of a topic of a lot of conversations, both here on the network and just around the world in general. So that is what is going on in that part of the world. We are also seeing that leaked documents are revealing that the U.S. has been spying on the Russia's war in Ukraine. I don't think anybody is shocked or surprised at that particular news, but it was released, and there's also some leaked documents that are suggesting that the U.S. might be trying to push Israel to do more in that space. So they might be trying to push the whole notion of getting Israel to do more active participation in that particular war situation. So that is something that is out there now, these leaked documents, and they're suggesting that Ukrainian air defense is in peril if not reinforced. And like I said, there is some conversation about maybe trying to push Israel to be more active in its support of Ukraine. So that is one of the things that that leaked document is talking about, and all in that kind of space. And apparently China is encircling Taiwan with warships and jets. It's doing those drills after a meeting between the Taiwan president and the U.S. House Speaker. And of course, the U.S. will probably be responding to that as well. So we might be having another case of another country trying to attack another part of the world as well. But hopefully that will not be the case. But only time will tell, and we'll see what goes on in that space. We are seeing that the Nashville City Council is moving swiftly to restore Representative Justin Jones to the House seat. Expelled Tennessee lawmakers were ripped for blaming racism on the explosion, and they said that the other lawmakers are saying that they were thrown out for violating the rules. But it does look like they may be returning back to that particular ruling body over there in Tennessee. And I know there was a lot of conversation after that particular shooting as well. And I think that that's where those protests came from. And then the fact that it was 2 African Americans expelled and 1 white woman that was not, it might have been part of the reason of that conversation as to whether race played a part or did not play a part in that sense. But we'll see what folks have to say about that on this particular show as well. And even though he's not made an official announcement, it does look like Biden is telling Al Roker that he does plan on running. He said he's still not prepared to announce his 2024 presidential run, but he did say that he is planning on running in 2024. And just despite all of that, they are looking like the campaign is taking a shape minus the announcement. So I'm thinking he's probably putting his people in place and all along those lines. But it'll be interesting to see what folks have to say in that space as well. But that is some of the things that are going on in the world that I am seeing about. I do want to bring in Gifty, because I do know she's got some interesting things to say about women in tech and some other things in that space. Did want to get to just a couple of more news stories before I do that. There is definitely more attacks were on Ukraine, even among the Easter pleas for peace. And I do know that the Pope had some pleas for peace based on what was going on in the Middle East, as well as over there in Russia and Ukraine and other parts of the world as well. But there was definitely some still work going on in that part of the world. And actually, Ukraine is saying that Russia is using the scorched earth tactic in Bakhmut. So that is what that is going on there. And speaking of other wars, there is a war over there in Yemen. And apparently there is some talks among the Saudi and the Houthi about bringing hopes of a ceasefire. And definitely it looks like Oman and Saudi Arabia are expected peace talks with the Houthis in Yemen. So definitely that is something that is going on, and apparently there is a possibility of a truce there as well. And Macron was in Europe, and apparently he has some things to say about U.S. and China policy, and that is the French president that was over in that part of the world and all along those lines. So definitely there was some things that were said in that regard. As a matter of fact, some folks were saying it was an anti-U.S. pitch, and he said that he was talking about the West's failure in Ukraine, and apparently he bagged many deals for the French with China, but somehow he still managed to end up annoying Xi Jinping. And one of the other things that they were saying was he rejecting American rhythm on Taiwan and nodding to China unity. So apparently he's trying to do some peacekeeping in one form or fashion or another, but we'll see what happens in that regards. And there is a religious leader that got in trouble, this time being the Dalai Lama, who apparently had to apologize after a video asking a boy to suck his tongue and all in that space. But definitely that is going on, and there's definitely some apologies that he has put out there on social media and all along those lines. But it will be interesting to see if there is any fallout in that regards, but we will find out and see what else is going on. We might get to some other news stories, but right now I'm going to come back over here and bring in some of my guests that I've got. See, I've got Lee Rhodes, who is one of my regulars, but I've also got Gifty and Anna Pakman. So I'm going to bring in Gifty first, and then I'll bring in Anna Pakman, who I've had on before and all in those lines. And definitely Gifty has done a lot of work in the notion of being an author, a speaker, and definitely involved in a lot with working women, because I do know that a lot of times working women are dealing with a lot as they are working. I just actually read a news article that was quite interesting recently and all in that space. It was about a area, and I don't remember where the area was, but it was somewhere in the United States, I believe, where they had actually built a place for working women to bring their children. So there was like a little crib area and other areas so that the women could actually still be at work and take care of their young ones as well. And I thought that was a very novel idea. I don't know how common that is becoming these days and all in that space. But when I saw that online, I felt it was quite interesting. And it might have even been right here in North Carolina. That what I don't remember where I saw it and what the nature of it was, or it might have been a LinkedIn article as well. But is that something that we're seeing more of a Gifty? Like I said, I'm gonna bring in Anna, I might bring one of my regular panelists and all of that. But are we seeing a lot of corporations being more accommodating to working women as well as working men, in the sense of providing some places for the young children to stay at while the parents are working in the office, if they are in the office?
Well, yeah, yes, and no. In that, they, in terms of being more accommodating now, because of COVID, which was also a blessing in disguise, believe it or not. Flexible working was tolerated, which is what women have been asking for a long time, which meant that they had flexibility around the hours, around location, etc., etc. But it also tipped a lot of employers into looking at other ways of looking after their employees and their well-being, and perhaps making them more productive. And so when it comes to working mothers, they realize that, you know, one of the things that will stress them out the most is their children and the care of their children. And so allowing them to know that their children are safe and being taken care of is something that would only increase their productivity, because they will be able to concentrate. So having places for the kids to be, as in creches and nurseries and stuff, that's been around for quite a while. In terms of some organizations, well, in the UK, for example, some organizations will give nursery vouchers to the mothers and stuff as a form of part of their remuneration. So it's been around for a while. But now I think organizations are getting broader in what they're prepared to give to their working women.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and definitely, like I said, definitely want folks that are watching to get more understanding about your own history. But what I found interesting about this particular article that I saw was that the I know that there have been nurseries in different work environments, but this was literally at the workstation. So literally, like you would see the cubicle going, and then right next to the cubicle would be the crib area, and on the other side might be another crib area. So it wasn't as
Right. Well, that's
nursery.
novel. That is novel. So no, I haven't heard or seen that. So yeah, that is novel.
Gotcha. And Gifty, tell a little bit about your own background, because, like I said, I know that you come from one of the African nations, and you now live and have lived most of your life there in the UK. And I know
Yeah.
that part of your work has been around what women go through, partially because of your own history and some of the things that you observed in your own life. And I know that you've visited various countries, but if you could just share a little bit about with our audience about your own history and some of your own work that you are doing.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I was actually born in Ghana in West Africa, and I came to the UK to do university. So I studied for accountancy, of all things, and so I worked as an accountant starting out in my career, and then I crossed over into IT. Basically implementing accounting systems, as it were, then, and then I went into ERP and all sorts of tech. So most of my career was probably in implementing IT systems, actually. And then, of course, I had my children whilst I was working, and got really burnt out. And so as a result of battling through my issues with childcare and my own personal health and all the rest of it, came out at the other end of the tunnel, shall we say, and wrote a book about my experiences as a working mother. And as a result of that, I got invited to do a TEDx talk, etc., etc. And so now, I don't do the IT consulting anymore, but what I do now is talking more to corporates about, their women folk and how to take care of them, is like well-being in the workplace, and also coaching women on the balance, or the juggle of being a working mother. So yeah, but I got 2 boys, and up until Saturday I had 2 dogs. I lost one of them on Saturday, but so now I just have the 1 dog.
Gotcha, and all that. I know you'd also done some work in women in technology. You kind of alluded to that earlier and everything, but are you thinking that we're seeing enough women in the tech field, or is that something that you are seeing being increased, or you would like to see more of? Because I do know that was part of your own background as well, and that has definitely been a conversation that we've been seeing around the country and around the world.
Yeah, so we definitely need more women in tech. When I was working in tech, normally I'd be managing programs and stuff, and most of the people, were men. And the difficulty with getting more women in tech is not because the girls are not studying tech. And, because here over in the UK, you get lots and lots of STEM programs, on the ground. So at entry level, that's not the problem. So at entry level, it's almost 50-50. But what happens is the workplace practices are not very kind to women, particularly when they have children. It's very competitive. And not only is it just competitive, because the women are they're just as able as the men and just as able to compete. But the working practices are almost prohibitive when it comes to women, particularly when you have a child. And oftentimes they're forced to make a choice between their career and their family. And a lot of women choose to go for their family, again, because of societal expectation of the woman being the primary carer. So they forfeit their career. And so what we have is what is called the broken rung, where normally at the point where women are just about to step into management or take on more responsibility, that coincides with when they're going off to have children. So their demands on them at home increases, and then the demands on them at work increases, and it's just, you get the perfect storm where something is gotta give. So they drop out of what is called the broken rung. And so then you have less and less women left there in management, and the fewer women you have in management, the fewer are going to come through as well, because there's not enough mentors for them, etc., etc. So yes, it's not just tech that you don't have enough women, although tech historically had a problem because it was seen as a male thing. But I think at the ground level, that is now fixed. But until we fix working practices, women will keep dropping out, and you will still get fewer and fewer women at the top.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. We've had some conversations here about women role models and the importance of women role models, or just role models of different ethnicities as well. And there are some folks that say that it is best just to be the best qualified in whatever your field is, and not necessarily be looking for positive women role models or positive role models of whatever the ethnicity group is, and all in that space. But I was just wondering your take on that, and how important is it to have role models that look like whatever the person is, whether that's their same gender, their same race, their same ethnicity, whatever. And I just wanted your take on that.
Well, as part of the human condition, it is easier to be what you can see. So if you can't see somebody that looks like you, speaks like you, acts like you, up at the top, it's hard for you to even get it, into your mindset that that is something that you want to go for. And obviously, in that competitive world, of the corporate world, it's not easy. And so when you come across difficulties, if there's nobody that you can perhaps go to who understands things from your lens, who's been through the experience, who understands that being a Black woman, you face a particularly unique set of circumstances, or being, I don't know, a different type of minority, you will face unique set of circumstances. So if you don't have a mentor, if you don't have somebody like you up there, it's very easy to give up. So yes, you can motivate yourself as much as possible, but it is, it really is for the exceptional, I don't know, 0.5% that can keep propelling themselves without seeing somebody like them, without them knowing that this is actually possible. And the only way you break through that barrier of impossibility is when it becomes accessible to your psychology, that hang on, this is the norm. And how do you know this is the norm? By seeing somebody just like you up there rocking it just like you.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And speaking of folks rocking it, I want to bring in one of our other guests, and I might have somebody that is one of the most prominent working dads that I know in all in that space. So hopefully, Jacoby will be ready to join us very shortly in all of those lines. But right now, I want to bring in Anna, who has been doing a lot of work in the disability space and all along those lines. And I know she's got a big event on Easter seals coming up and all in that space. So Anna, if you could share a little bit about what you've got going on. I know we've talked about disability, and I've had you as a guest in the past, some of with your acting colleagues and some of the others when you were doing a performance piece that was I think about a year or so ago, and all in that kind of way. But just share a little bit about the event that you've got coming up. And then, of course, like I said, you have Jacoby, and I've also got Sasha with us as well. But definitely, I'd love to hear about the event you've got. And I did see you shake your head at a lot of what Gifty was saying.
Mark, thank you so much for having me on again. And Gifty, wow, what, just great insights that you were able to offer just now, especially having a disability, and the whole concept of work from home has been very, kind of near and dear to our hearts. And, as an accommodation that many of us need, both for being high risk for COVID, but also that has been something that's been a need in the past for a variety of physical access issues. But I'm actually here to talk about my new film, which is called Cripfish. And that's a 5-minute romantic comedy short that I made along with a number of talented individuals, both with and without disabilities, for the Easter Seals Disability Film Challenge in honor of their 10th anniversary this year. For those who are not familiar with what Easter Seals does, Easter Seals is actually a disability services organization, one of the biggest ones here in the US. And every year they host a filmmaking challenge that asks teams to make a 5-minute short on a topic that they provide, which this year was romance, in just 5 days, and it has to be up to 5 minutes long. And so this is something I've been doing for a few years now to help raise awareness for the need for more accurate representation of people with disabilities in the entertainment world, as well as to just shine a light on how much talent there is in the disabled community, both in front of and behind the camera. So Cryptfished, which people can watch, it's out now on the Easter Seals Disability Film Challenge YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram channels, is a really funny story about a person who meets a woman on an online dating app and falls in love with her and decides to lie to her and pretend to be blind because this other woman says that she only wants to date people with disabilities, and she happens to be visually impaired. So we see her go through this motions, this really hilarious way of showing up to a date and doing all the things that we're fed by mainstream media as, these stereotypes of what blind people are like, but in real life are completely ridiculous and exaggerated, and no one should be doing that. And then we have a really interesting, twist. I'm not going to spoil it for your viewers, but there's a reason for this lie, and they end up in a good place. And what inspired me to tell this story is just the combination of this phenomenon in online dating called catfish, of people lying and pretending to be something they're not, and also the phenomenon in the entertainment industry of something called cryptface, which is a lot of major productions casting people who don't have disabilities as characters with disabilities, and therefore shutting out disabled actors from those opportunities.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I'm glad you were able to bring some light to that. And like I said, I'm going to bring in Jatovi. Jatovi, like I said, is doing the work with, my fact, I think he's got his child with him today and everything. But he is definitely in the entertainment industry and all along those lines. So definitely glad to have Jatovi with us here as well. And he's definitely done a lot of work in that space. And like I said, when I think of working dads, definitely Jatovi is one of those. And he's in the process of trying to get his own esports center here in Durham and doing a number of other things in that space. But Jatovi, you were listening to some of the conversation. I'm sure it probably resonated with a lot of the things that you do, including some of the work around disability and other things. But I'd love to hear some of your thoughts as well.
I think one of the greatest things said earlier in the conversation was people want to be where they can see. And I do love that. Because it's very true. Representation definitely matters. And then what was really interesting is the movie Cryptfish dealing with disabilities, which I truly enjoy because I have one with disabilities here. And so it kind of hits home. And also listening again to the conversation earlier about women in the workplace. That's another one that I've got, where it hits home. So she's actually in the other room. Playing on her phone, which is the big thing now for kids. I'm just here to listen and learn. That's all I'm here to do, really.
I appreciate it. Anna, one of the things I was curious about, and maybe Gifty has some thoughts as well. And of course, we do want to get Sasha on so we can hear about what's going on in his mind from what's happening there in Ukraine and all in that way. But one thing that I was curious about is, do you feel that there is enough activity and encouragement about disability rights and all in that space, or is it something we are still a long way from being in a good place with, or have we made enough advancements in your opinion? And Gifty, maybe you have some thoughts around it from other parts of the world, as you have definitely traveled around the world as well. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, Anna, as to how we're doing with disability rights.
Yeah, so I personally am very fortunate in that I grew up in the 90s, and for most of my life, we've had the Americans with Disabilities Act in place that was passed in 1990. So from a legal perspective, especially compared to a lot of the world, we do have a lot of protections. And because of that, a lot of places, and it's an increasing number, have become more accessible. The workplace has become more accessible. I still think we have a long way to go. Just because something is required doesn't mean, in reality, it's always what's done.
What is your take, Gifty? You've definitely traveled around the world.
Yeah, I agree with Anna. We have a long way to go. It doesn't mean it hasn't got better. Things have definitely massively improved. And previously, when they're talking about disability rights, it seemed to be about physical disability. But now they understand there's things, neurodiversity and all the rest of it. So it's not just about what you can physically see. Somebody can have a lot wrong with them, and it's not even wrong. They're just different, right? And so they're not the norm. They're not neurotypical, and we have to live in a world that is diverse enough to be able to accommodate all of us. And so changes, this is still a hell of a lot of changes that need to be done to make particularly the workplace kinder to everyone.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Everything. One of the things I know me and Jatovia have talked about, but I'd love to hear Anna's thoughts about this, and definitely want to hear from Jatovia because we definitely talked about it a number of times, is there are a lot of attempts in the video game industry, which we know is one of the larger industries in the world, to be more accessible to those that are disabled, whatever the disabilities are, in that space. And then there's also been conversations about the impact. Some people will automatically blame incidences on folks watching video games. I will not be surprised if somebody doesn't make that an issue with this latest shooting, which is going on in Louisville as we're speaking, or actually the aftermaths are going on as we're speaking and everything. But what is your take on the role of making sure that we are making the video game industry and other even parts of the entertainment industry accessible to the disability community? And do you have any thoughts about those that are critical of the communities feeling that there's not enough access to that community in the video game world? But I was wondering your thoughts, Anna, and I'm sure Sophie will jump in.
Yeah, so video games are unfortunately not my area of expertise, but there are a few initiatives that I've been aware of in terms of just physical access. Companies, especially the console manufacturers, really looking at ways to make these things more accessible so that more people can engage. But I'd love to pass the mic.
Yeah, Jacoby.
So Microsoft. Well, yes, game developers and console creators, especially, they've started to make a heavy push to include a lot of the, make the controllers and the ability to play the games a lot more accessible to those with special needs. PlayStation this year made a huge push at CES when they showed off their controller to help out those with special needs and special abilities. Same thing with Microsoft. Microsoft years ago did a commercial, one of their big Super Bowl commercials when they were trying to market the Xbox, I think it was. They showed their controller where they had a bunch of kids coming to a house, and there was a young child in a wheelchair, and he was using one of their special controllers to play the console versus the other kids that came over to play. So gaming has always tried to be as inclusive as possible. The tough part is that our society, as has been alluded to by everybody here, our society has problems, and when the guise of anonymity is added on, it makes those problems magnify. So those with, women in gaming, for example, there are a lot of women that play mostly the handheld games. There are a lot of women that are in gaming, but there are people that won't know because they hide themselves behind maybe a different character because of the abuses they receive in the game. If you can imagine it as, the catcalling, the old stereotype of catcalling that happens right in front of a construction site, that is magnified tremendously online because you have the guise of anonymity. I mean, just look at any social media that goes on. Women are attacked. Those with special needs and special abilities are attacked. Racism is magnified, so on and so forth. So gaming itself has always tried to be inclusive, but the tough part is that guise of anonymity, as it makes it tough on the social part of things more so than the just the game itself. But there's able-bodied gamers, which is a group of individuals that got a huge amount of funding to help out those with special needs and special abilities to play games. I'm in the process of trying to work with a local group. I'm not going to make any announcements because it's still in the process, but one dealing with special needs as well to get more so in the gaming. Same thing. I'm trying to work with Women in Tech and a few other women's groups to make sure that women have a safe environment to play games, but also get into the industry of gaming and stuff that gaming touches, especially technology, programming, coding, artwork, just you name it, content creation, so on and so forth.
Hey, Gifty, really quickly, and I'm going to bring in Sasha so we can get to some of the world edition and world news as well. But Gifty, what are some of the issues that you are finding to be of most concern to working women? Like I said, definitely childcare is one, but I know there are a lot of other issues that are out there also. But what are some of the issues that you are finding as you are doing this important work with working women that are needing to be addressed and maybe aren't being addressed, whether that's in the UK where you are, or whether that's in the US where we are, or other parts of the world?
All right, so I'll come to that in a moment. I just wanted to address something that Yatovi said, which I thought was interesting, because my son is actually studying computer games design. He's doing his master's in computer games design, and talking about, being what you can see, because some of the avatars that they have, he had to send his artwork to somebody in Japan or somebody to draw whatever the figure had to look like. And he was showing it to me, and I said to him, why isn't that figure black? Do you know? And so now, because he's like, okay, so let's just say in his game that he's designing, that figure now is black. But that is the impact of having minorities included in something like that. But okay, so now back to the question you're asking me, Mark, about challenges for women in the workplace. So burnout is number one. It's huge at the top of the list, because they're burning the candle at both ends. I mean, there's research to show that 75% of household work is done by women, whether they're married or not, or in a relationship or not. So they will, before they get to the office, they would have done like a full day's work. And then you come to the office and then you have to come and compete toe to toe, literally, with somebody that's just rolled out of bed and come to the office. All right. So that makes them prone to burnout. And also putting that to one side in terms of their physical health, which basically destabilizes a lot of things, because the women tend to be at the center of a lot of people's lives. So they're the center of their kids' life, if they have a partner, the center of that, if they have aging parents, because they tend to do all the nurturing duties that they're there. This is what lends them to burnout. But even putting that aside, when they come into the workplace, there are so many biases that they have to face. There's like performance bias, for example, where people automatically assume that a man is just the boss and the woman is, I don't know, the secretary, the tea maker, whatever. And so a woman has to go in there and earn the respect and prove that she can do it, whereas when the man is just conferred. So that's performance bias. And then there's affinity bias. People like people just like themselves, right? And so because you have the men in the senior position, et cetera, again, they get frozen out. And then you have maternal bias, so maternity bias, because there is the danger that, why are you investing in them? Why are you training them? That they're just going to go off, have children and not come back. Or even when they come back, people treat them like their brains don't work anymore, or don't work at the level that they used to work now, because now they have children. So they have to deal with that bias as well. So there are lots of biases that they have to confront in the workplace, that a lot of the time, some people just can't be bothered and they just give it up. And so if you're asking me about problems that women face, there is the physical aspect of it, which is the burnout of, having to burn the candle both ends, and then also the biases that they face in the workplace. Now, I still, for the life of me, cannot believe that we've been having children since forever. And we still have not come up with some workplace policy that supports these women in a way that, people don't have to hide the fact that they're pregnant when they go for interviews, and when they're pregnant and work, they don't have to hide it from their bosses. I mean, we've been having children since forever. Surely we should have policies in place that shouldn't force a pregnant mother from hiding this very, very useful contribution that we make to society, i.e. building the next generation, you know, and for us then to have to pay for that with our health, I think that is shameful.
How much is an issue with in terms of the workplace with sexual harassment? We know that a lot of times people will talk about that, and they'll talk about this attitude of maybe even sometimes there are gentlemen that will claim that they are getting accused, even though they don't feel that they are always in the position of power to even be doing that kind of harassment. But I know that there have been even some panelists on here that have talked about that in the past and everything. But I was just wondering, from the two ladies' standpoint, and Jatovi, if you want to jump in as well, do you think we're doing enough to address the issue of sexual harassment on the workplace?
Sorry, who do you want to go first?
You go first, Gifty.
All right. So, I mean, sexual harassment, I mean, for me personally, I will be forever grateful for the Me Too movement. I will be forever grateful, because what it does is it gives language. Because previously people would have been exposed to inappropriate behavior, but they didn't know what to say. They didn't know how to say it. Without being labeled as too sensitive or whatever. But now with Me Too, all what you have to say to somebody literally is Me Too, nothing else, and they rein it in. And so for the younger generation, they have vocabulary now, they have language to use. So the older generation, they prided themselves on being tough. Those are the ones that were tough to be able to bat somebody's hand away if it was going in an inappropriate place. Not everybody was equipped to do that. But now we have an environment and a language to be able to deal with the problem when it's happening. It might seem like now we hear more of it. It's not because we hear more of it. I think now, because we have the language and we have more channels, it is exposed even a lot more. Again, are we where we're supposed to be? Not yet, not quite yet, but it is far, far better than where we were.
What's your take on that, Anna? And I can even add some of the things that go on with the disability community as well, because I know that sometimes people, and Gifty alluded to it earlier, don't always understand what people are going through when they are in the workforce. I know that I've had some coworkers that were in the spectrum, and definitely you had to respect their notion of distance, because they didn't always have the same notion of personal space as everybody else did. So you had to have those conversations with them and understand that there was a difference going on in that space. But what is your thoughts about the way that employees are dealing with the different kinds of harassment that can take place, including some of those to the disability community?
Yeah, I mean, first to address, the question about sexual harassment, I think Gifty really covered that beautifully. I think the one thing I would add is just the broader awareness is always helpful in terms of people are just much more aware now that, there are certain behaviors that are completely inappropriate. And so, in terms of like a big problem also, sexual harassment is like, as a woman is being believed, right? So that people know that this is, a problem, and that's not just like a problem for a particular individual or a problem for particular two individuals. I think that has made things, better to an extent. Like all bad things, has it completely gone away? No. But, I think, as we all grow and, deepen our understanding together, things, definitely are looking up. I think in terms of understanding of disability, in the workplace, that still has a long way to go. Most, I myself have a physical disability, can't really see my wheelchair, the way I'm sitting here. But, if I'm going into a room in my chair, it's like fire engine red, you can't miss it, right? Unless you're blind, which, some people are. But I think there's a greater understanding of physical disabilities like that, where people understand like, okay, there's a step here, we can overcome that step of a ramp, than there are with what, are often called invisible disabilities, which could include things like autism, could include, things like mental illness, where people who have those disabilities most often choose not to disclose them in the workplace because of the biases and because of, this discrimination that they've faced in the past, and that quite frankly, keeps happening. I think in terms of one of the things with the film challenge, for me, actually, what's been interesting is usually, I've been in workplaces where I have had, a couple of employees here or there with disabilities. Mostly those have been actually other people with physical disabilities. So those things, are just like a little bit more obvious in how to accommodate that. But, I've had people on my teams, including the team for Cribfish, who are on the autism spectrum, who have ADHD, who have, low vision. And one of the great things for me as a producer is also just like quickly learning how you accommodate those things. And in most cases, it's not a big deal. It's easy to do. It's not expensive to do. I'll give you a couple of examples. One of the lead actors is she has low vision and needs larger, font. And all I had to do was export my script in Word so that Bree could make the font any size and any font that was going to work for her. So that really didn't require a lot of effort on my part. Another example of, and this is a case where accessibility for a disability benefits absolutely everyone involved, which is often the case. Like we have curb cuts all over the city. And we have elevators, and lots of people use those who are not disabled and benefit from those things being there. One thing we did that was very important to me, because it's an accessibility accommodation I needed for myself, is we had a lot of stringent COVID safety practices. And these are not hard things. We all took, a rapid PCR test that I provided. We all, when we were indoors together, wore KN95 or better masks. And we had a HEPA filter that I already had in my apartment, and we opened the windows. So simple things like that. It cost me $15 a person to provide that level of accessibility that the billionaires had at Davos for their meetings. That kept everyone safe, because we actually did have one team member who ended up being asymptomatic, testing positive. And because she was wearing a mask, and we were all wearing masks, everyone else ended up being completely fine and healthy, and these tools do work.
Yeah, it sounds really good and everything in that space. I was just curious, and I'm gonna bring Sashi in as well so we can get to some of the other stuff's going on also. But how much is the Good Old Boy Network still out there, Anna and Gifty, in your thoughts and everything? Because we do hear a lot of folks that will say that that is part of the reason that we haven't had the changes that we need to have, is because there is that Good Old Boy Network that exists definitely in the West, but in other parts of the world as well. But I just wanted your take on that, Gifty, and maybe even your thoughts around that, Anna, as well.
So, the old boy network, that is just the affinity bias, right? So affinity bias is just people gravitating towards people just like themselves. And that becomes problematic when the people in power are gravitating towards people just like themselves. And so as it still stands in most industries, the people in power tend to be the men. And so if they're gravitating towards people like themselves and mentoring people like themselves, we will have more of the same. And so the women lose out. And so that's what we need to change. And that is why when it comes to employment practices and recruitment practices, we have things like, diverse interview panels, so that, you're not having a monochrome culture where you're having the same people at the top, and that they're forced to open it up and have different people come in.
What is your thoughts, Anna?
Yeah, I agree. I have nothing to add. That was said beautifully.
Sasha, definitely wanted to hear. You've been listening in the background and everything. I didn't know if you had any thoughts about some of the things around diversity and just around women's rights in general. I know that you have a lovely wife who is also a master champion in the world of chess and all in that space. So I know that you are very supportive of her career, and that's actually how y'all met, if I remember correctly, and all along those lines. But definitely love to hear your thoughts around some of this conversation. And of course, we definitely want to hear what you're hearing on the ground there in Canada as to what's going on in the Ukraine. But definitely, before we get to that, if you had any thoughts about the conversation.
Okay, my view probably will not be very popular, but let me tell you, as an entrepreneur, and when you start your own business and you sink most of your savings and your time and your talent and ideas, and you try to have a like-minded team of people who are ready to share your vision with you, work 80 hours a week, and be with you for foreseeable future. Now, when business, if it succeeds, as you know, most of the 90% of the businesses fail. So if you are lucky enough to be in this 10% and the business succeeds, then it becomes a different story. Then it's still small business, but now it proved that it will survive, it will run, it will probably would be successful, hopefully. And you're becoming more flexible. You're not working longer 80 hours a week, maybe 60 hours a week, but you still need a core of people who share your vision as before and work with you. Some of these people will quit along the way, some people will stay on. And only when this enterprise will become hopefully a mid-sized business, which will be governed by independent board of directors, when it will have all the policies of supporting minorities and women and many other things, then this business will become viable for women to or people with disabilities, although it's not the same thing, as we all know. But at least these categories of workers could be attracted to this business and could thrive in that. So when you are making a choice where to work and where to develop your career, you have to very clearly understand what kind of business is it and at what stage of development is it before jumping in. Because to find a fairness and equal treatment or anything on the first two stages of development of the business is impossible, and no one should try.
Gifty, I was wondering, and based on what Sasha just said, but I did read one of your columns and some of your writings and everything, and there is a notion out there, and there's been a notion out there for centuries of the women being the weaker sex. And I did notice that in one of your writings, you actually took kind of opposition to that notion and everything. So I'd love to hear your thoughts around that and part of why you try to debunk that thought along those lines, because you definitely, in one of your writings, I did notice that you were definitely making an argument that that might not necessarily be the case.
Yeah, so I was literally having to sit on my hands as Sasha was speaking. And Sasha, as you were saying, what you were going to say was very unpopular, and definitely it's unpopular with me. So I hear you when you're saying about starting a new business. I completely hear you. I'm a businesswoman. When you're starting, you have to work, stupid hours and all that. But, women start businesses too, and they work stupid hours. So, I mean, it should not exclude them. And as a small business owner, yes, you have to make pragmatic decisions. So if you're a small business owner and perhaps you are looking for new staff and stuff like that, and somebody comes to you and they're 9 months pregnant and you're staring at them, the decision you will be making might be different if you're working, 90-hour weeks, and you want somebody that's going to put their shoulder to the pump with you at that particular point. That might affect your decision making. But that said, women start businesses, women work 90-hour days, and they can, as far as I'm concerned, if we have a society that supports the women, right, they can contribute to the workplace regardless of where they are in their biology, etc. So it's just because we have a society that expects the women to do 75% literally of the nurturing and the child rearing and all that, and so there are not systems in place to support her, then the poor old woman cannot come to the workplace perhaps, and where somebody is at that nascent bit of their career and working the 80-hour week, she can't do that because she's got a family that is dependent on her, and she has to do perhaps her 8 hours and go and look after the children. But as a society, this is why we have to look at this holistically. As a society, these women need to be supported, because somebody has got to bring up the next generation. Otherwise, there will be nobody paying our pensions. There will be nobody clearing the streets. There will be no doctors looking after us when we are ill.
Any thought to response to that, Sasha? And definitely, I didn't know if you had any further comments about the weaker sex, because I did read that, and I did see where you were bringing up some of the points of women being strong and maybe even able to do jobs that are not always seen as being traditionally women jobs.
I think that I agree everything what you just said, Gifty. And there is no universal recipe how to help all these women. Most of them are smart enough to take a good care of themselves, either by having good jobs, well-paying jobs, or having supportive husband or boyfriend or whoever it might be. So you have to really navigate that the best of your abilities. But there is nothing else I can say.
Yeah, that makes sense. Everything. Anna, did you have any thoughts that you wanted to bring? And then, like I said, I did want to get the report on Ukraine before we get ready to get out of here, and definitely want everybody to know how they can reach everybody that's been on the panel today and everything. But Anna, did you have any other thoughts before I get to Sasha and what's going on in that war and all along those lines? And we do have his report on Tuesday as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with everything Gifty said. I also was kind of sitting on my hands. So, I think there's a lot of, I think it just clearly shows, there's a lot of bias and misconceptions on what people can do. I think whether you're talking about women or people with disabilities or any other minority, quite frankly, I'll give you an example just for production. We produced the film in one day, but it was a 12-hour day. I pulled an all-nighter editing parts of this thing. And you might look at me not now because you can't see it, but you might look and see a disabled person, but this doesn't mean that yeah, I'm bad at walking, but there's no walking involved to edit a film. There's no walking involved to shoot a film, so there are, a lot of things that, people can do. And I think if, you're going to go based on biases, no matter the size of the business, you're going to lose out on a lot of talented people because, one of the things, that I really love about my team is just how diverse it is. And, for example, our cinematographer and lead editor is a Black man. And I, for those who, can't see me, I'm a very Caucasian woman. And, I didn't bring him on board because of oh, I need someone who's different like that. Oh, here's a friend who knows what he's doing and I do not. And I need his talent in order for us together to make, this whole project better.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. Sasha, if you could give us a quick update on what you're hearing about Ukraine. I did hear the comment that I made earlier about Bakhmut and its scorched earth policy is apparently what the Russians are doing. And of course, there is this recent leak that is out now. And apparently there might be a push to get Israel more involved, and there was a couple of other things that were released during this leak, including how much the U.S. is spying on what's going on in Russia and Ukraine as well. But I just wonder your take on what's going on in some of these latest developments.
I think you have to make a clear distinction between important things and unimportant things. The important thing is that Russia attacked Ukraine, an independent country, and is killing its civilians, maiming innocent people, raping kids, women, and destroying civilian infrastructure and making life impossible in Ukraine. That's the main thing. All the rest is noise. The people in the United States who are talking about no more money to Ukraine, they are fools and complete idiots. They don't understand that today they're supplying weapons, money, but Ukrainians are spilling their blood, both men and women and children. And if Russia will ever defeat Ukraine, then NATO, US soldiers will start spilling their blood. You have to be completely irresponsible, stupid as well, to say such things. And many people, including former President Trump, are saying exactly that. Sorry to hear that.
Definitely. What is the thoughts of the other folks on the panel just about what's going on in the world, and particularly there in Ukraine? And then, like I said, I did want to give everybody a chance, particularly Gifty and Anna, to give their thoughts about how they can be contacted in some of their latest work. And hopefully we'll get both of them back on either the World Edition and some of our other shows in the near future as well. But anybody have any thoughts about what's going on both there in Russia and other parts of the world as well?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can jump in here. Actually, 3 of my grandparents are Ukrainian, so I've been not as recently, following the war. Actually, had a relative who was stuck there at the very beginning, and thankfully, him and his family are safely, home in your home state, Mark, in North Carolina, and they were able to get out. But it's just, just in terms of just like so many human rights violations, just such a tragedy that this is happening in the year 2023. And I agree everything that Sasha said in terms of like it's imperative for the world's democracies to support Ukraine, because that's really what's on the line here.
Yeah. Your thoughts, Gifty?
Yeah, so I mean the futility of war, I mean it's just people's children get killed and mothers are there dying, children are dying, young men are dying for what? For what? And eventually at some point somebody's going to sit there and have a diplomatic solution. So why don't we have it now? Anyway, and for those of us close to Europe, well, not just Europe, the whole world, we're now paying the price of high fuel prices and all this, cost of living, simply because one person decided to go to war against Ukraine. So yeah, it blows my mind. It blows my mind that we are where we are. But, war is just the futility of the whole thing when it comes to war. I have never got it as a human being. But that's a different conversation altogether. But Toby, I want to hear what you've got to say on this issue.
On war or on the other issue that we discussed when I was listening to both you and Sasha. Well, actually, you guys and Sasha go back and forth on the one answer, and then earlier I again was listening in on the question Mark asked about the changes in the workforce. So I just got tons going through the head. I guess I'll run it through as fast as possible since it looks like we have only a little bit of time. But you guys, I felt I stand with you guys as much as I can, because as what you said was perfect in terms of the Good Old Boy Network. That was spot on. And then on top of that, I completely agree with it. And there was, he just got his, my son just got his milk. But I completely agree. One of the big issues that that we're dealing with in the changes of the workplace is the fact that we are coming, I hope, fingers crossed, we are coming out of a patriarchal society that we have to keep pushing ourselves into, and this ties into what Anna said at the end about accepting everyone, and everyone has something to offer. Coming out of that patriarchal society, we have to understand that there are other individuals with great ideas and great solutions than just the straight white male. And that is what's dominated our society completely for a very long time. And until we finally get out of that and just accept everyone for who they are, like having a child with disabilities, I have accepted children more. I mean, before I had a child with a disability, I understood and accepted kids with disabilities, but now I can understand more. And that's where that representation comes into play, because of my education from learning from him, I can adapt what I do and what I say. And that goes into understanding. Yeah, I could ramble on forever, but it looks like we're sitting at 30 seconds.
No, I appreciate everything. Just really quickly, if you could, Anna and Gifty, if you can tell folks how they can reach you and other places that you can be heard and seen and all in that space. And of course, we'll be back with another World Edition on tomorrow and everything. And Sasha will probably say that this, and I don't know if he'll agree with me or not, but it's probably one of the most diverse panels that we've had in a long time and everything, because sometimes it is made up of a lot of men and maybe one woman. So this time we've had 2 women, and we've definitely had a mixture of ethnicities and all in that space. So this is probably one of the more diverse ones that we've had in a minute. And so, but definitely Gifty, if you can tell folks how they can reach you, and the same with Anna, and then I'll hit the magic button.
So I mean, my website is giftyandwrite.com, and you go there and you can, find me and find out anything you want to know about me. I am on all the social media, so I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter. You just search Gifty and Write and you will find me there. The website is giftyandwrite.com.
Sounds good. Anna, if you can tell folks how they can reach you, and I know we might be having a further conversation later on this afternoon as well, but if you can tell folks how they can reach you, I would appreciate that also.
Yeah, so I'm also on all the social media, particularly Instagram and Twitter, Annotated, ANNATATED. And you can find my work on the Easter Seals Disability Film Challenge, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram pages.
Sounds great. Jatovi, are we having a Gamers Den later on today, or is that going to be on Tuesday, or when is the one for this week? Because I know you got to do your baseball games also.
Yeah, we'll definitely have one tonight. I was just gonna play a couple of games that I've been meaning to get to. Speaking of diversity, there are a few games that I'll be playing tonight that deal with diversity, that are from diverse programmers and so on and so forth. But yeah, I'm a big advocate of diversity, so I like that.
Yeah, sounds good. I appreciate all of y'all being on. Sasha had to bounce off and I think get to the Economics Monday show, which is actually what's coming up next. So glad to have both Gifty and Anna on, and hope that we will see them back on the network on some other shows as well, sharing some more of their insights. But glad that I was able to meet Gifty recently, and I've known Anna now for about a year and a half or something along those lines. So definitely hoping to have both of them back on in the very near future.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you.